the greatest medical breakthroughs of this century have come from the development of new drugs and medical devices. We live our lives without the threat of many illnesses that terrorized our grandparents. Research into treatments using new drugs and new medical devices has proceeded at an ever-increasing pace. But these new treatments had to be tested and refined before they could be used widely. A clinical study is an essential step in getting these breakthrough drugs and medical devices to the public. To begin, a clinical study is defined as any investigation in human subjects intended to discover or verify the clinical, pharmacological, and/or other pharmacodynamic effects of an investigational product or products, and/or to identify any adverse reactions to an investigational product or products, and/or to study absorption, distribution, metabolism, and excretion of an investigational product or products with the object of ascertaining its safety and/or efficacy. Clinical studies are initiated by a sponsor. Quite often the sponsor is the company that developed the investigational new drug or medical device being tested. But it's important to note that independent investigators, for example physicians, conduct the clinical trials. Clinical studies are meant to ensure the safety and effectiveness of investigational drugs and medical devices. Through clinical studies and the people who perform them, new investigational drugs and medical devices are tested for safety, for effectiveness against the condition or illness they are designed to treat, and for potential interactions with other drugs. Regulations and guidelines regarding good clinical practice mandate how clinical studies should be conducted. Good clinical practice, often abbreviated simply as GCP, is an international standard for conducting ethical research. GCPs help to ensure the safety and well-being of clinical trial subjects are protected and provide assurance that the data and reported results are credible and accurate. The International Conference on Harmonization, or ICH, has published guidelines to provide an international standard for designing, conducting, and reporting studies with human subjects. All recommendations in this video and the accompanying workbook are based on these ICH Good Clinical Practice Guidelines. These guidelines have been endorsed by the European and Japanese authorities, as well as the Food and Drug Administration, FDA. Some of our predecessors in the healthcare industry took part in clinical studies for medications that literally changed the world. The rewards for taking part in these studies can last a lifetime. Many of us have these same opportunities now. Hi, I'm Ann Lilly, and I'll be walking through this educational program with you. Important new investigational drugs are being developed that must be run through the rigors of clinical studies. It's our responsibility as study coordinators to make sure these studies provide accurate information. Countless lives depend on our work as coordinators of clinical studies. Almost all successful clinical studies have one thing in common. They are managed by a responsible investigator in charge. Working with the investigator, the study coordinator, often known as a clinical research coordinator, is the person who often runs the day-to-day activities of the study. The study coordinator could be a nurse, pharmacist, data coordinator, resident, intern, or another allied health professional. The study coordinators are the people who assist in making it all happen and make it all work efficiently and safely. This program consists of this video and an accompanying workbook. The program is designed to give you insights on how clinical studies are conducted and to highlight some of your responsibilities during the study. Taking part in a clinical study is an opportunity to be part of medical history. It's very exciting, and it's a big responsibility. This video is designed to work in conjunction with the Study Coordinator Training Program Workbook. It's important for you to thoroughly read and study the workbook for specific clinical study practices and regulations. Your workbook is your reference tool. Reading the workbook will provide you with the information you need about the specifics of your responsibilities, regulations, and procedures during a clinical study. This video will specifically cover the following topics: the drug development process, roles and responsibilities of the study coordinator, the role of the Institutional Review Board and Independent Ethics Committee, informed consent issues, and regulatory and sponsor audit visits. During this video, for simplicity, we'll use the term IRB for both the IRB and IEC. Let's start by taking a look at how the drug development process works. Drug development begins with testing new substances in the laboratory with animal studies. Once the safety and efficacy has been tested as far as possible with animals, the sponsor notifies regulatory agencies regarding its intention to begin testing the investigational drug in humans. Regulatory agencies are government organizations responsible for promulgating and enforcing regulations. The sponsor sends a request to the regulatory agency for the use of the investigational drug in humans. All preclinical data is submitted. As long as the regulatory group doesn't contact the sponsor with a problem, the first phase of clinical studies can begin. During phase 1 studies, the investigational drug is typically tested in healthy volunteers for the first time to test the safety of the drug. This phase involves between 20 and 80 people over a short period. Phase 2 studies are used to determine the effectiveness of the drug in the disease or condition under study. The number of patients expands to a few hundred and lasts longer than the phase 1 studies. Phase 3 studies are usually large, multi-centered trials that involve up to several thousand subjects. These are typically randomized, well-controlled studies. As a study coordinator, you may be involved in just one or several of these phases during your career. Not all investigational drugs progress through all phases of drug development. We must be sure these medications are tested thoroughly before they are prescribed for patients or ourselves. Fortunately, as study coordinators, we are in a position to do something about that. We can take part in research activities that could affect millions of lives. At any given investigational site, the study staff is organized as a team. The individual staff members are employed at the study site and are responsible for all procedures, medication, and documentation involved in a clinical trial. The study staff includes the principal investigator, sub-investigators, study coordinators, nurses, pharmacists, and support staff. The principal investigator typically delegates numerous responsibilities to the study coordinator. The study coordinator is usually the primary contact between the physician's office and the sponsor. The sponsor is often represented by a clinical research associate, or CRA, who is assigned to your study site. The study coordinator is also an internal expert regarding the study plan, is aware of the status of all ongoing study activities, and is the primary resource for developing operational plans. The study coordinator often has a major role in recruiting subjects for the study. Overall, you are responsible for orchestrating all the activities involving the recruitment and enrollment of study subjects and managing the study's crucial data collection and documentation. Once the sponsor selects your site, you must complete several activities before the actual start of your study. One of your first responsibilities will most likely be to organize and maintain the investigator's study file. This file contains all the important documents relating to the study. The file will probably include a sample case report form, the study protocol, and any amendments made to the protocol, curriculum vitae of the investigator and any sub-investigators, IRB-approved informed consent form, laboratory certification, and any correspondence with the sponsor and IRB. In fact, any document you feel is important to any facet of the study, excluding financial agreement made with the sponsor, should be kept in the investigator's study file. A well-maintained and complete investigator study file is key to a successful regulatory agency or sponsor audit and the study. For the study initiation visit, you must ensure the confidentiality agreement is signed by the investigator. You must thoroughly review the study protocols, case report forms, and the investigator's brochure. Develop and negotiate your study budget with the sponsor. Contact the labs, pharmacy, and other departments to inform them of the study requirements. Submit the necessary regulatory documents to the IRB or IEC for review and approval, and compile and submit all pre-study documents to the sponsor. The pre-study documents that should be submitted to the sponsor include the Form FDA 1572 or its equivalent, a draft of the informed consent form, CVs of the investigator and all sub-investigators, laboratory certification and normal range, a copy of the protocol signed by the investigator, and a copy of the IRB membership list. The CRA usually conducts a site initiation visit after the IRB or IEC approves the protocol, consent form, and other required documents, and these documents are submitted to the sponsor. The purpose of this visit is instructional. The intent is to make sure your personnel understand the protocol and the sponsor's expectations. To make sure you're prepared for this visit, thoroughly review the protocol and case report form, or CRF. Prepare a list of specific questions you might have regarding study implementation. Prepare for the receipt, storage, and documentation of the investigational study drug. Collate all study and regulatory documents into a neat investigational file. Make sure study personnel are available to meet with the CRA, and confirm the visit with the CRA. Usually the investigational study drug is shipped to the site immediately before the initiation visit. During the site initiation visit, the sponsor's CRA inspects the drug. Once this inspection is complete, and if your site has received IRB approval, your site can begin to enroll subjects. During the study, a majority of your time is spent fulfilling the following activities: maintaining the investigator's study file, managing and organizing source documents, completing case report forms, managing and reporting adverse events, drug accountability, continued interaction with the IRB or IEC, continued communication with the sponsor, usually the CRA, and obtaining informed consent from subjects. Let's take a short, closer look at each of these jobs. Clinical studies are scientific endeavors. They require careful documentation. For that reason, maintaining the investigator's study file and managing and organizing patient source documents at your site is extremely important, and it's one of the study coordinator's critical responsibilities. As discussed, the investigator study file contains all the documents compiled for the study. Throughout the study, more documents will have to be added to the file. The file is used as evidence that the study was conducted according to protocol and GCP. As a study coordinator, you must make certain the file is always up to date and ready for frequent review by the CRA. A case report form, or CRF, is a document designed to record all of the information required to be reported to the sponsor on each trial subject as specified in the study protocol. These CRFs can be printed, optical, or electronic documents. A key responsibility of the study coordinator is to accurately transcribe this required data from subject source documents into the CRFs. The sponsor provides CRF completion guidelines that must be followed by the study coordinator. There must be a completed CRF and accompanying source document for each enrolled subject. Source documents are defined as original subject documents, data, and records from which study data is extracted. Some examples of acceptable source documents include hospital records, clinical and office charts, laboratory notes, X-rays, and pharmacy dispensing records. All data transcribed into CRFs are verified against data originating in source documents. The source documents are thus part of the critical documentation for your study. Clear, concise, and complete source documentation is essential to a well-run clinical study. Routinely, all the CRFs and source documents are reviewed by the CRA assigned to your site. Sponsors and regulatory agencies will pay close attention to all adverse experiences reported by the subjects. These are closely monitored during the study for the safety of the patient. An adverse event is any untoward medical occurrence in a patient or clinical investigation subject administered a pharmaceutical product. The occurrence does not necessarily have to have a causal relationship with the treatment. Drug accountability means keeping accurate current records documenting the quantities of drug received, dispensed, and stored at the site, and quantities returned to the sponsor. Maintaining drug accountability is usually a task of the study coordinator, even though the principal investigator is ultimately responsible for dispensing the drug. You may be asked to assist with several of the following. Conduct an inventory of all drug supplies. Place the study drug in a secure area. Maintain drug shipment and receipt records. Make certain that the drug is only dispensed to study subjects and according to the protocol. Instruct subjects in the proper use of the drug. Verify drug compliance. Document drug dispensation. Complete drug accountability logs. Return unused drug and maintain and update study drug inventory. Institutional Review Boards, or IRBs, also known as Independent Ethics Committee, IEC, play a very important role in clinical studies. IRBs and IECs are independent bodies consisting of a mix of medical and scientific professionals with non-medical, non-scientific members. The responsibility of the IRB and IEC is to ensure the protection of the rights, safety, and well-being of human subjects involved in a trial, by reviewing and approving the trial protocol and the suitability of the investigator and facilities. IRBs must review and approve all investigational drug research prior to the start of research at your institution in compliance with regulations. Your institution may have an on-site IRB, or there may be an independent IRB affiliated with your facility. Because the frequency of IRB meetings varies, it's important for the study coordinator to know when the group meets and what specific documents the group is required to review and approve. It's also useful to clearly communicate this to the sponsor so a target study initiation date can be scheduled. The study coordinator is closely involved in managing and documenting correspondence with the IRB, thus plays a critical role in assuring compliance with regulations. Let's take a moment to watch a scene in which an experienced study coordinator meets with the principal investigator at their study site to prepare for an IRB review.
Hello, Kath. Kath, what's the status of our regulatory documents for this particular study? The IRB is scheduled to meet next week, and why don't we go over a checklist to see that the packet is complete?
Okay, everything's ready. First I have the 1572, which has been signed and dated on the back.
Okay.
This is a current copy of your CV with your medical license attached.
Okay.
This is the protocol, which you've already signed.
And we had discussed some changes to this protocol. Were they put in?
Yes, they were.
Okay, good.
This is the informed consent. We have added payment information for the patient.
Good.
And this is an advertisement. We decided to run an ad, and this is the copy to submit to the IRB.
All right. Very good.
And this is the letter of petition requesting approval to conduct the study.
All right, good.
And this is the investigator's brochure.
All right.
Let me take a look.
Well, that looks like our packet, submission packet is complete. They meet next week, and we'll get this in the mail overnight.
Right.
And then we'll see what happens.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
As you can see, meeting with an IRB has a certain sense of urgency and requires a great deal of preparation. Following its review, the IRB will give the principal investigator written documentation regarding approval status. The IRB must also periodically review the ongoing progress of the study. Informed consent is one of the most important aspects of implementing a clinical study. The subjects taking part in the study must be fully aware of the experimental nature of the investigational drug they'll be taking. Here's a formal definition of informed consent. Informed consent is more than a subject signing a paper. It is a process by which a subject voluntarily confirms his or her willingness to participate in a particular trial after having been informed of all the aspects of the trial that are relevant to the subject's decision to participate. Informed consent is documented by means of a written, signed, and dated informed consent form. As a study coordinator, you may be asked to review and revise the consent form before it's submitted to the IRB for approval, but only after the sponsor approves the final draft. You should review the informed consent to make sure all required elements are included. As a study coordinator, you may be actively involved in obtaining consent from recruited subjects. Let's take a minute to watch an experienced coordinator and a potential study subject working through the consent process.
Hi, Kathy. I'm Sue, one of the study coordinators. Dr. Buck tells me that you're interested in doing one of our studies. This is the informed consent for an investigational antibiotic that's going to be looking at how well the medication works versus an established antibiotic that we're currently using. When you read this, I want you to pay close attention to the possible side effects, the length of time of the study, and how often the visits.
How many visits are there?
There's 4 visits and 2 visits that you have blood drawn at.
Any other testing?
No, that's it for the testing.
Okay.
At no time will you be under any obligation to do this study. I'm going to leave you a tablet and a pen to write down any questions that you might have. And I'm going to go out, close the door, give you a little bit of privacy, and when you're done you can open the door and the doctor and I will be back in to answer any questions or concerns that you might have.
Okay.
Okay?
Thanks.
You'll notice from the previous scene that the coordinator gave the subject time to review the informed consent, and that the coordinator always used simple wording for complex medical terms to be sure the subject fully understood. You must also avoid using words or actions that place pressure on the subject. Obtaining informed consent requires tact and diplomacy. Subjects need to know that they can ask questions or speak with family members as they make their decision. Each subject must sign a consent to participate in a research study prior to becoming involved in the study. The signed informed consent form is a key document and must be filed and accessible to study auditors at any time. Signed informed consents, along with all other study documents, must be retained after the study is terminated. Once the sponsor collects all data, a study termination visit is scheduled. This visit focuses on the retrieval of supplies, ensuring all outstanding data queries have been addressed, the retention of records, and ongoing obligations of the investigator. The investigator must complete a summary of the study and submit it to the IRB. The coordinator is typically responsible to make sure that the study records are maintained and stored properly. Regulatory audit visits are conducted to ensure the trial is adhering to GCP. Sponsor audits may also occur, which are often useful as preparation for regulatory audit visits. The length of time an inspection will take may vary. The inspection will focus on the following: are case report forms and accompanying source documentation available for all subjects enrolled in the trial? Are there signed informed consent forms available for all subjects enrolled in the trial? Is the case report form data verifiable with source documentation? Are the investigator files containing essential documents complete and up to date? Have all protocol deviations been documented in writing? Is there an audit trail for all data corrections? Is the subject data at the investigator's site consistent with the sponsor's database? Are pharmacy records available and complete? Was the IRB notified of serious adverse events and deaths in a timely manner? Let's take a few minutes to watch a scene from a regulatory audit. The study coordinator in this example has been careful to assemble all the material that will be required. Signed informed consent forms, CRFs and accompanying patient source documents, documents in the investigator's study file, drug accountability records, and any other paperwork the sponsor has asked her to maintain.
Okay, Donna, this is the conference room. I have the case report forms and the necessary books out for you to review. I'll just give you the time that you need. If you need me, I'll be back in my office.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Hi.
Dr. Bach, this is Donna Wickert, the auditor.
Donna,
Hi, Dr.
hello.
Bach, how are you?
Nice to meet you.
Stephanie and I have finished reviewing some of the case report forms, and I just have a few questions for you.
Okay.
First, I'd like to know is how were the responsibilities for this study delegated?
Well, here at this site, we delegate responsibilities to our sub-investigators primarily. At our site, we use a delegation statement. We have that officially put down, and we use that.
Okay, thank you. Who was responsible for training your personnel that was involved?
I was responsible, and during each trial, we have regular study meetings that keep everybody up to date.
Okay. To what extent did you supervise the conduction of this study?
I was fully responsible in supervising when I was on site, and when I was not, my sub-investigators were responsible.
Okay. Was the IRB notified of any changes to the informed consent or amendments to the protocol?
Yes,
Were your coordinators responsible for those submissions?
yes. For example, we had an SAE in this study, and they were kept up to date.
Okay. Any safety concerns that you may have had with the drug, did you share that with your sub-investigators and your study coordinators?
That's right.
In review of all of your case report forms in your source document, I was able to do good cross-referencing. There were no outstanding issues. The drug accountability logs were up to date and accurate. The regulatory binder was fine. All correspondence was accountable. All of the approved consent was present, and all of the IRB approvals were current, along with your CV and license. So as of now, there are no outstanding issues involved with this trial.
Very good. Glad to hear that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Stephanie, I just have a couple questions for you. As I told Dr. Bach, there really are no outstanding issues, but I just have some very specific questions. Where were most of the procedures done for this trial?
Right here at the office. There was an occasion where the patients had to go to a university hospital to have an echocardiogram done.
Okay, so that was the only special equipment that was necessary was the echocardiogram
Correct.
then? Okay. Were you involved in obtaining informed consent from the patients?
Yes, I gave the patients a consent form. They reviewed it with ample time, and then I reviewed the questions with them.
Good. Could you give me an idea how the sponsor set up the monitoring visits?
Sure, the monitor was out every 4 to 6 weeks and reviewed the case report forms, the drug accountability, and the study file notebook.
Okay. Did you do corrections with the monitors at the end of the review
Yes,
of the
we did.
CRFs? Okay, good. The other thing I noticed, this is your only drug accountability, is what's in this binder?
Yeah, that's correct. We have this drug accountability binder. There's 1 page per patient. Doctor signs them off at the end of the study.
Who came out and was responsible for the packaging and return of drug to the sponsor?
The monitor.
Okay. And I noticed there that Dr. Bach signed the drug dispensation form. Did you witness his signature on that when the drug was shipped back?
Yes, I did.
Okay. There really were no outstanding issues. I did go back and review the SAE that Dr. Bach talked about, and you did follow it to resolution. There was adequate correspondence to the IRB about it, as well as with the sponsor. Your source document worksheets were very good. They were very well documented. I couldn't find any problems with the informed consents. They were all dated and signed prior to any study procedures that were done to the patients. And as far as I can see, this audit's complete and there are no outstanding issues at this time. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
As you can see, being prepared for audits will make these meetings go smoothly. We've seen that taking part in a clinical study is a very rewarding way to contribute to the advancement of medicine. Being a study coordinator is challenging, rewarding, and often very exciting. We've covered a lot of ground during this video. We reviewed the drug development process and tried to focus on your responsibilities before, during, and after a trial. Additionally, we highlighted site interaction with the IRB, the informed consent process, and sponsor and regulatory audits. Your role is critical in the efficient conduct of a trial. Your commitment gives you an opportunity to take part in the advancement of medicine. Thank you for your time and attention. Here is a list of highlights of this video and information about additional references you can find in your workbook.